There was a time when war was simple to see. It was steel against steel, tanks against trenches. You know where the front line was. You could point it on a map, you could hear it in the distance, but over time war became quieter. It moved into the air, into cyberspace, into data. It stopped asking for soldiers and started asking for clicks, and now it's here, around us, but inside us. Today, our mind is both the weapon and also the target. Every headline that we see, every post, every scroll on your feed, they're not just pieces of information, they're signals designed to shape what you believe, how you react, and who you trust. Modern warfare isn't about destroying cities anymore, it's about capturing attention. It's about planting doubt, small enough to feel like your own thought, but powerful enough to move nations. Think about it. One fake video can spark riots. One manipulated photo can alter an election. One anonymous account can make millions believe a lie. And by the time the truth catches up, the damage is already done. That's the reality we live in now. A world where propaganda isn't something governments print. It's something we share, actually. Where the most dangerous battleground isn't on the ground at all. It's in our minds. And that's what today's conversation is about. Because to understand this new kind of war, the cognitive war, you need to understand how information itself has become militarized. Our guest today has spent years documenting exactly that. He's a journalist, an international analyst, and author of Cognitive Wars, a book that dissects how states, intelligence agencies, and even private companies are learning to fight not for land but for perception. He's reported from over 50 countries, from the front lines of traditional conflict to the invisible front lines of disinformation. His work connects geopolitics, technology, and psychology, showing us how every modern war now begins long before the first shot is fired, and often without one ever being fired at all. So today we're going to ask, how do these wars work? Who's behind them? And most importantly, how do we defend ourselves when the battlefield is in our human mind, right? And this is the Intelligence Spotlight, and I'm Qais Alamdar. And joining me today is Daniel Iriarte, the author of Cognitive Wars. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Qais, for the invitation, and hello to everyone.
Daniel, you've been in real wars on the ground with soldiers, with of course chaos around you, but now your focus is on this invisible kind of war that happens in people's mind. Was there a moment when that shift happened for you, when you thought that this is the real war now?
Well, for me, it happened accidentally. I was, as everyone, covering the 2016 election in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw how powerful these kind of campaigns could be, the Russian interference campaign in the election. So, well, I started writing about disinformation, political interference, digital manipulation, and then, well, some people noticed my work. So I started working as an analyst for the disinformation campaigns, because now we are in a moment in which the position of a disinformation consultant is becoming a reality, because, for example, private companies realize that disinformation can have a really serious toll on their business if, for example, it affects a change in a government where they operate and the subsequent regulation changes, or something like that can affect supply chains, everything. So also reputational attacks. So this position is becoming more and more common. And well, I started working as that. And mixing my journalist job with this, the result of the combination of both activities is the book, which I have here.
Great.
Yeah, I'm afraid the book is only in Spanish so far, but if there are enough comments to this podcast, maybe I can persuade my editor to translate it into English.
Yeah, definitely. I actually looked at the excerpt of your book, which is still available in Spanish, but I had to translate that online to get an idea of what it focuses on. It's interestingly, it focuses on the very recent examples of how cognitive wars are being played around, and then specifically given your experience on those different zones and regions of the world. So your book, Cognitive Wars, which is the English translation, but in Spanish it's Guerra Cognitivas, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a Spanish speaker, but I try to pronounce it correctly. So even the titles feels uncomfortable because it includes wars, right? But it's actually inside our mind. So it's one of those ideas that actually makes you look at your phone differently, when you think of cognition and then wars combined with it. So when did you first realize that this isn't about information anymore? But the real battlefield is now how we think.
Yeah, well, I cannot say when. It was more a kind of gradual process.
Hmm.
Then I realized that these kind of activities were everywhere because I mean the title of the book is cognitive wars in plural because that's a trick because I didn't want to focus specifically on cognitive warfare, which is a very we can say concrete specific concept, military one. But then you see that everybody is using this. Everybody with the muscle and an intention to have an impact online has this kind is developing this kind of campaigns. For example, Mexican cartels, drug trafficking cartels, jihadist movements. You know, everybody with since social media don't have a real entry barrier because they are mostly for free. If you have enough muscle to promote your ideas online with enough people or enough accounts, you can have an impact. So then I saw that this was related to everything that was happening in the world, you know, transforming minds and turning that into political action on
Hmm.
destabilization campaigns against other countries. So that this is what I wanted to address in the book, not only the specific cognitive warfare, but I was talking about it in a wider sense, about
Hmm.
how this is happening in multiple areas of our
Yeah,
lives.
absolutely. I I agree on the part where these sort of wars did exist for so long, and especially like propaganda, the term itself has been around forever, like since we remember civilization. I think it was part of our civilization to have also propaganda, but the recent ones were like about posters, right, and radios and leaflets. Even today, that has changed into memes, right? Memes are kind of the modern version of that. But what you talk about feels also very deeper. It's more psychological, right? So, how do you explain the difference between the old school propaganda, like we had the Soviet posters, let's say the red posters or the communist posters, or different countries, different states had their own set of branding of propaganda, and what you call cognitive wars? Maybe if you can explain the difference.
Yeah, it's a very good question because actually one of the traits of cognitive warfare is that in contrast with propaganda, propaganda used to be passive. It's like,
Mhm,
okay, you send a message and try to persuade some people about your ideas. In cognitive warfare, you want to turn the people that you transform into your soldiers. You want them to become
mhm,
active and spread your message, which is much more impactful. Like, you know, it's like a zombie epidemic. Then
yeah, yeah,
you have people who become the soldiers of your army because
mhm,
people who have changed their minds tend to be very assertive about their new opinions, you know. So when you have, we can say that cognitive warfare is like the sustained bombardment of audiences with specific messages designed to appeal to their biases.
right.
And well, a short definition would be hacking minds, you know,
Yeah,
like transforming the people into the new soldiers of your army.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because you only have to create that virus to infect one person, and that one person will do the whole thing without any other cost you would do. And I think social media algorithm is a good example of that. A few months ago, I guess there was this fake news website that pretending to be Le Monde, the French news website. and claiming that Macron built some secret bunker which cost around 148 million euros. It was totally made up, but looked so real that people shared it for days, like almost genuine people, not just fake accounts. They would keep sharing it. So when you see stuff like that, as an example, where the credibility itself becomes the weapon, like using Le Monde as the main credible source, what goes through your mind in that sort of, when you see those sort of examples? Are we still able to tell what's real? In case if someone who's not experienced and how to differentiate information, what's the first thing they should look for?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned this because that's part of a Russian operation called False Facade, in which they use legitimate Western sources, faking their covers mostly, or faking some news in order to grant credibility about this. But the point is that probably you will never have an effect with a single isolated fake message. You need to have it
Hmm.
sustained during the world and through multiple means. Not only, I mean, one of the principles of propaganda by Goebbels, one of the principles stated by Goebbels is the principle of orchestration, meaning that
Uh-huh.
you need to have several variations of a unified message through different means. So people receive it from different sources to the point that it starts considering it true. For example, this specific message was part of one of the clearest example of cognitive warfare, which is Russia's campaign to convince the world that Ukraine is a singularly corrupt country,
Right.
despite the fact that, for example, in Transparency International rankings, Russia is 10 points in a position 10 points worse than Ukraine. There is corruption in Ukraine, of course, but not as bad as Russia wants Western audiences to believe. Because the purpose is that Western audiences feel that Ukraine is not worthy of the aid that Western countries are providing it, and
Right.
corruption is an excellent way of promoting that. And this is a really, really successful campaign because many people is absolutely convinced that Ukraine is hopelessly corrupt and we have nothing to do there. We should cease aiding it, whatever. So coming back to your question of whether if we can know what is reality or not, I think there is still hope. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard. It requires some effort to verify what we see. But I think this is not a lost barrier at all. We
Right.
can go deeper on this later if you want.
Yeah, yeah. So when I read the excerpt from your book, which was available for free online to have an understanding of what's included, I still keep thinking about this idea from the book that says perception can shape outcome more than facts. Like sometimes people react to what they feel is true, right? Not what actually happened. Sometimes that could include, as an example, an incident happen, and then there are facts that says, okay, A, B, or C are the possibilities, but people know there's something else. I don't feel this is true. I don't feel, oh, I feel this is true. The feel part is very, very playing crucial role in how people decide. But have you seen that play out up close somewhere, like a moment where the story people believe become more powerful than the truth itself? Probably an example if you could provide.
Well, I think one very clear example is the people who still feel that the US 2020 election is rigged
Yeah.
against Donald Trump. And then you had people who felt it strongly enough that they assaulted the Capitol, the Congress, the US Congress on 6th January 2021. So I think that's a pretty good example, because the
Mm.
most successful messages, disinformation messages, the most successful cognitive warfare initiatives appeal to feelings
Right.
using our biases. They are designed to get us angry, to get us overwhelmed, to feel that we should, I mean, this is impossible. It's impossible to know the truth here, so we shouldn't pay attention to this. there is always a feeling, because when
Right.
we are feeling, we are not thinking. I mean, our rationality, it lowers down, so our defenses, our mental defenses also get a bit lower, so it's easier for us to get a message. That's why memes, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
are so efficient in this, because sometimes with humor they are introducing a message which sometimes is quite radical. But since these guys has humor, we laugh with a joke until we, maybe if we saw this joke or this message isolated, we will realize that it's a racist
Yeah.
meme. But since these guys have humor, many people laughs, and then the idea stays there, because, for example, memes are used to widen the frame of what is considered socially acceptable. For example, they are
Right.
an excellent tool for radicalization in this regard, because they expose you to something as
Mm.
an isolated image, which can be humor, as
Yeah.
in propaganda posters, or it can be, for example, another feeling. Maybe they want you to get angry about something with a picture. That is the key. Feeling is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've seen people that they deliberately avoid the type of news that usually makes them feel angry or feel sad, or in like news about tragedy, things like that. So among those news are always this part where they want to change people as or part of a disinformation campaign or want to target them. So you always have this category of people who would avoid these type of news at all. So they are safe in that sense. But when it comes to memes, as you said, it widens that scope because, of course, everyone loves memes. Why not? So they give you the same idea, but in a more sarcastic way or a more laughable way, so that you could watch it. And that usually I've seen it a lot with people keep sharing it and saying stuff like that. Even when it comes to the 9/11, the Twin Towers, that has become a meme recently, especially around the time of 9. And then a lot of Islamist or jihadi networks sharing those memes saying, they call this terrorism and then they do this, but it's in a very meme like thing. They made it, and it was going around at the past few weeks during the 9/11. But yeah, definitely. And you also have spent years of studying these sort of manipulations, seeing how narratives are built up like that and how they break people down as well. But I'm wondering, because you are also exposed to this sort of information, you are seeing them, trying to analyze them. That must take a toll, right, on you. And how you, as a person, protect your own mind from all of this, or does it still get to you sometimes?
It's really nice question, guys, because nobody asked me this before, and it's actually very true. Sometimes I have to take a big breath and say, okay, I have to put some distance between what I'm saying, because I get angry as well. Sometimes
Mm,
it's like, yeah, sometimes it can be really tiresome, because you are seeing things, even if you see from the point of view of the analyst, it's like you get angry because this is working. It's like, okay, I'm totally aware that this is fake. This is not real, but I know people is buying that. How
right.
can they be so shameless? So evil. Sometimes manipulated people like this. So yeah, sometimes I get angry. Well, we cope with this how we can. Sometimes we have a chat with all the analysts or friends interested in these things. Is like, and sometimes you share this, saying, "Look what they say." How can they? You complain with people around, and that's a way you can, well, distance yourself from what you are saying. I mean, it's not like analyzing atrocities or things that can have a serious vicarious trauma. This is it's
Yeah.
not that bad. But yeah, definitely it's bad for our nervous system. So we have to, I mean, the best thing is to share it with, at least is my way of dealing with this. Share it with friends, complain
You
to my
basically
wife.
let it out, you know?
Yeah. Let it out. Yeah, exactly. Not get it inside you,
Yeah.
because otherwise can be tough.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this also touches upon on the importance of having a circle of trust, or people that you can trust, that you can share these feelings or thoughts, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We may feel different things, but if we have the circle of trust, we can share them and it will not be a burdensome for us. But if it's built up for long term, it really has some negative impacts. And of course, with I think the past years since 2024 up till now, I guess we also see a rise in AI related manipulations, right? And earlier this year, there was this fake Biden robocall went viral, if you remember, and the AI cloned voice of Joe Biden told voters not to show up. And it's wild that a few seconds of fake video can, shake trust among people, or that it shook trust like that. So when things like that happen, what does it tell you about where we're heading? Because you mentioned that, okay, there is still hope in a very doubtful way you said that, but I want to know exactly where we're heading in that direction. And when anyone's voice, even a president's, can be hijacked.
Well, my conclusion after these years of research and of what I found and the examples is that the real problem is not technology. The real problem is how many people you have willing to believe something.
Right.
I mean, in the book, when I finished the book, which was in February, the year 2024 was a super electoral year. There were elections in 75 countries, if I'm not wrong. And there were many fears that artificial intelligence was used to create deepfakes, who could alter elections. At the end of the year, nothing of that had happened because, well, one thing that is happening is that, okay, technology evolves for disinformation, but it also evolves for disinformation detection. So at the end of the day, the important thing is not how elaborated is the forgery, but how many people you have willing to believe that. And in the book, I give a couple of examples. During a few weeks after the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a deepfake of Volodymyr Zelensky appeared online calling soldiers to surrender. Nobody believed that, you know? Well, the deepfake was not very good, but
Yeah.
still, it happened in a moment in which the Ukrainian troops had confronted successfully the Russian invaders and expelled them from the northern part of the country. So it didn't make any sense that Zelensky at that point was calling for surrender. So nobody bought it. And I had the opposite example. There was I think it's 2019. It was in 19. A really, really cheap forgery. It's not a forgery, but well, what we call a cheap fake. You know, the opposite of deep
Cheap
fake.
fake, yeah, that
Fake
is
is
very
a
visible
really
that it's
good
fake.
falsification. A cheap fake is one that is really gruesome and but
Yeah,
this was a video of Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the U.S. Congress, talking about as if she was drunk. You know, she was dragging the words and talking slowly. So it really looked that she was drunk. It was a really, really well. I mean, when some disinformation researchers looked at this, they concluded that it had been done by somebody in his personal computer just by slowing down the clip
yeah,
25%. So then she was talking slower than normally. So it looked that she was inebriated. She was intoxicated with alcohol. Well,
right.
this was wildly successful because it appeared in a moment in which Pelosi was one of the most hated figures among US Republicans, to the point that her home was assaulted by a man and his husband was severely injured by a man with a hammer who was trying actually to kill her. So this is what I mean. The context and the bias is everything. Is 90% of the success of much more than how good is the falsification. So coming to artificial intelligence, I think the real risk is not in how good it can create fakes, but in well how it can appeal to each of us. Let me explain myself. There was a fear for many years. I mean, the debate about TikTok in the US. Many security analysts feared that, well, TikTok, as you know, is a platform that is really, really aggressive in gathering data from the users, even more than all the platforms. All of them gather data, but this one is especially aggressive in this regard. So there was a fear that using artificial intelligence, all this data from millions and millions and millions of users could be gathered, and then IA could produce personalized messages for every user, micro-targeting. So in this regard, artificial intelligence could be really a tool for mental transformation, you know?
Right.
Micro-targeting is not a total novelty. It was used by, for example, the company that everybody has heard of, Cambridge Analytica, during the
Right.
Brexit referendum and the US election 2016. But this would make micro-targeting, it would take it to a whole different level.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a fear for a long time. Well, we knew a few months ago that this is already happening in China. There is a Chinese company called GoLaxy, which is using artificial intelligence to monitor online conversations. And if they don't go in a way that is positive for a Peking regime, for the Communist Party, it starts creating messages automatically to shift the conversation in a way that interests the party. And yeah, so I mean, this is little this fear that we had is already happening using artificial intelligence to shift, to change opinions and change minds, you know. So far, this company is only operating in mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. But there was a concerning development. We know because there were some documents, internal documents that were leaked to the New York Times, who was the media who reported on this. But there were also some gathering of information on several US congressmen. So probably there is a plan to interfere in future elections in the US using artificial intelligence. So we are in a risky movement.
Yeah. That's quite shocking in a way, but also I think it's always good to have a warning. And this, I would consider it more like a warning than like something we would be hopeless, because all these warnings can help us better equip ourselves with what's coming. And I think what really gets me is the ordinary people that become part of these sort of warfares. We share, repost, comment, and then suddenly we're also helping spread something that designed to manipulate us, and a lot of ordinary people can fall victim for it. And do you think that we've already crossed the line where we, the audience, sometimes are unknowingly become part of that war?
So I think we are in a moment of adaptation. You know,
Mm,
this has been really, really successful for some years. I would say a decade and a half, because we were not aware of this. But now you see surveys around Europe, for example, and when people is asked, what are you afraid of, or what you are concerned about, this information is always very on the top of the agenda. So I think that's a very, very positive development in the sense that many people is aware that this is a problem, you know? And we are seeing it in the younger generation, which should be uh, the main victims of this, because their exposition to social media, for example, is much higher than previous generations. But at the same time, they are more cynical about it. You know, most of them are totally aware that many of the things that they see are not true. You know, this has its own risks because we are. I mean, here the problem could be to having entire generations of cynical people who that do not believe in anything. You know, but I don't think this is a lost battle, as I said. I
mm,
think we are changing, we are adapting, and I don't know. Let's see what emerges. I
yeah.
think we didn't reach the bottom Probably we'll see really ugly things soon, but I think the seeds for the solution are already planted.
Right. Yeah, I think everything goes really fast at the moment with AI, right? And everything has been like fast forward, like fake videos and how quickly it can be made now with AIs and very realistic ones, given like ChatGPT's Sora, for example, or Gemini's VU3, all these new ones that actually are super, super cost efficient, but also takes less time. Back then, if they would want to make a deepfake, it would take some time to make one because they had to do everything manually. But now it's automatic with just a prompt. And basically, fake headlines, fake everything, all faster than like what fact checkers can actually, try to verify. And it takes for fact checker to verify one single news takes more time. And then once they are ready to publish that news is already gone. There's another one trending. Do you think we'll ever be able to catch up with this, or it will be the same thing? Like a mice and a cat thing, like catching each other? Or is this just how information works now? Chaos first and truth comes later.
Well, I'm not sure that trying to catch up makes sense.
Mm,
I mean, there are studies showing that a lie travels 6 times faster than a fact. So when you have disinformation actors, sometimes state actors or non-state actors, people doing it for a profit, creating fakes at an astonishing speed, you cannot. It doesn't make sense trying to verify or to debunk every affirmation. It's more efficient to create firewalls, mental firewalls, possibly. I mean, what we are seeing around the world is that what is working best is creating an environment in which people is aware that disinformation exists. For example, Taiwan. In Taiwan, you have several WhatsApp chats, sometimes from private organizations. I'm not sure if they are governmental as well, where if you see something that you suspect is a lie, because Taiwan is subjected to a very intense cognitive warfare from China, trying all the time to undermine the current leadership, who is, we would say, Taiwanese nationalist, which is something that didn't exist some years ago, but now it's a reality. Trying to convince that the current leadership is taking the island to a catastrophe. They are leading the nation to a war. That everything would be much better
right.
if they are reunified with mainland China, and so on and so forth. But the fact that these chats exist, of course, they cannot deal with the sheer volume of messages, of fake messages that the Chinese government and other actors are putting into the Taiwanese information ecosystem. But the fact that the chat exists serves to remind the people that not everything they see in chats or in social media is true. And that's valuable by itself, because it makes people to be in guard, to be more watchful, let's say. And the other successful experience is the one that is taking place in some northern European countries, for example, in Finland or Estonia, where this kind of educational programs, awareness programs, start very early in the schools.
Mm,
They have like kindergarten children being taught that, okay, not everything that you see there or that you hear is true. Sometimes there are people trying to lie to you.
yeah.
They have cartoons. They have eh, awareness programs on narratives. They encourage the kids to check the source always to see if the source is legitimate or not, things like that. And the result is that they have one of the lowest penetration of disinformation in the continent, which is
Yeah.
actually a big achievement since they are both bordering Russia, which is a strong
Yeah.
actor pumping disinformation narratives in their countries. So I'm a teacher in a intelligence master, in a master on intelligence analysis, where I teach a small, how can I say, a small lesson on checking and verifying online sources, journalistic sources,
Right.
journals and online sources. And I try to teach the students. And well, my focus on this lesson is that since there is an incident, let's say a fact, something happens, since the news
Yeah.
happened until we received it as users, as information users, there may be distortions in the process. So we need to ask ourselves a series of questions on how where this distortion could be, maybe sometimes is something as simple as having a journalist who doesn't really have the knowledge to understand the subject he's talking about and is reproducing it in the wrong way. This can happen with, for example, with very technical issues. Sometimes there is intoxication from an interested actor trying to sell a specific narrative. There might be disinformation. There might be an ideological line, strong ideological stance by the media who distorts the content in a specific way,
Yeah.
So I give them a small footprint of questions that they can ask themselves. For example, if there are many adjectives in the information or not. And well, this is designed for people who is going to be professional analysts. But this is something that we all, as citizens, should try to do as an exercise every time that we receive a piece of information, asking ourselves, there might be distortions in this piece of information and where the distortion may come from. That would be a really healthy exercise for us as a society if we all did this. I know it's tiresome, it's complicated, but things would be much better, I think, if we all tried
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like on the very basic level, just asking question: Is this true? Is this there to help me understand this subject, or is this information is actually trying to make me angry or make me feel in a certain way? I think the questioning part should be part of this whole societal education. To not just trust everything out of nowhere, but to ask a few questions about it. And I think in this part of our conversation, it would be very good to have a scenario based situation. So imagine this that there's 3 days before an election, a deepfake video drops and it looks flawless, like perfectly made, sounds real. And a candidate, actually, a presidential or an electoral candidate, is taking bribes on the spot of that fake video. And it spreads everywhere. And journalists also panic about it because nobody is able to prove it's fake in time. But it keeps spreading and takes time to prove it that it's fake. If you were running a newsroom that day, what's your move? What do you publish exactly? And what do you hold and wait for verification? And how do you avoid being played like trying to stay safe overall? What's your first move that you would do?
Well, first, it's not a fictionalized scenario because it happened in the elections in Slovakia last
Very good.
year. It was not video, it was audio. And actually, the candidate affected by this, who was supposedly talking about bribing members of the Roma minority to vote for him, and the other was funnier. The other allegation was that he was going to raise a lot the taxes on beer,
Wow.
which, as you know, it's a very important thing in Slovakia and in Central Europe. And this candidate lost the election, actually. We
Wow.
don't know to what extent it happened, but one of the features of this campaign is that it appeared exactly in the moment when the media were not allowed to report on political news anymore. So it spread uncontested in social media.
Wow.
And of course, we cannot say that the candidate lost the election because of this, because probably there were many other factors, which is something that I would like to point. It's very difficult that a single video can change an election because not everybody is going to see that video. So we shouldn't panic about this kind of things because it's very difficult that in order to have a massive impact, this could spread enough. And I mean, if it's a fake, we will for sure know sooner than later because of course there will be a forensic analysis and everything. In this case, the impact resided in the fact that it was done like 3 days before the election.
Wow.
So the media could not report that this is a fake, you know. I don't know if, well, of course, first I will try to resort as a journalist if I face this scenario. I would try to resort to a forensic expert who could tell me if the video is right or not. If it's real, of course, I would report it because if it's fake, I would also report as well, probably giving it a lot of space. I mean, to be clear that somebody is trying to interfere in the election against this candidate, you know,
Right.
which also may have an impact. Russia has tried that in France, for example, several times, and France is being very innovative in this regard because the have you heard about the Macron leaks? After 2016 election in the US, Russia tried to interfere in the French election as well with another forgery.
Wow.
But the French were, after what had happened in the US, they
Right.
were prepared for this. The party of Emmanuel Macron was prepared for that, and they reacted super quickly. They had warned journalists. Well, not only the party, the French authorities had also gather the leaders or the digital strategy chiefs of all the main parties to warn them about the possibility of this kind of interference. So when the forged documents about Macron started spreading, both the French government and the Macron party reacted very quickly, making clear that this was a forgery and that there was nothing that could be taken seriously, despite the fact that some of Macron's rivals tried to exploit it, but to no avail. You know, the French society realized that this was an interference attempt and it didn't work, you know. So I don't know. I think there should be many different factors in place for such a campaign to be successful,
Hmm.
which are really, 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 really difficult to have all of them in place. So I'm not especially worried about a single forgery, you know. I think what is more successful are long-term campaigns. When you're trying to erode a candidate with multiple messages, different forgeries, different narratives that go against the same candidate through different means. What is really efficient. But a single forgery, I'm not too concerned about that because I don't think that would work.
Yeah. And I think preparedness for any such a scenario, I think it's very necessary to have for a newsroom. Like they should be prepared for every type of forgery or fake news that might come up, especially during elections. It's keep increasing before the elections and also during elections, as well as after the elections. Going back to your book, you started your book with a quote from Nietzsche, and that was a question actually that Nietzsche asked: how much truth can a man bear? And I'm asking that question from you. Did you finally found the answer for it?
No, I'm afraid not. If Nietzsche, who was a fabulous philosopher, couldn't give a close answer to that, I don't feel. I think we are all subject to the risk of disinformation because, as I say, disinformation plays with our biases, and I mean nobody is exempt of these biases. We all need. I mean, there is one of the things that I discuss in the book is the relationship between conspiracy theories and radicalization, because to be a radical, to be an extremist, you have to have a really distorted way of the world, and there are no extremism without disinformation. But I quote a study who says that we all believe in at least one conspiracy theory without
Yeah,
knowing, you know,
I see.
because most conspiracy theories are built on the lack of information. I mean, when we don't have enough information about something, we tend to get to look for explanations. And if the explanation is fake, we simply assume it. And so if you ask around the people you know, how many people believe the September 11th terror attacks were an inside job, or that we never reached the moon,
Yeah.
the trip to the moon never happened, you will be surprised because there are so many people. I mean, for
Sometimes they're
most
very
people,
convincing. They give you very convincing theories about that too.
for many people, conspiracy theories are simply entertaining, you know? So many people play with them even if they don't really believe them, because they can be called the agnostics of conspiracy theories,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
philosopher Qasim Qassam has called them. Sometimes, I mean, if that's the only explanation available, pues, then we just take it without thinking, you know. So we all would be surprised to know the truth about some things, you know, because we all believe in at least one. Because as I say, they play with our biases. And we all can be the victim of disinformation, even if we are trying to be aware. I mean, a few weeks ago, I shared some information about Donald Trump, which happened not to be true, you know. It was, I mean, in this current political environment in the US, it was not unconceivable. So
right.
I uncritically shared it until a friend told me, this
Mm,
is not true. So I checked, he was right. So I deleted it. But, you know, it happens to all of us because it plays with our biases, you know.
exactly. Exactly. So, Daniel, this has been a very wonderful conversation so far. Where can our Spanish audience or Spanish speaking audience can buy your book or order it? Can you tell us where to look for it?
Yeah, sure. Well, the distribution of the book has been really good because the editorial company is very well connected. So in most big bookshops, you can find it. If not, if you live in a small population where the distribution is limited, you can always buy it in the website of the editorial, which is called ARPA,
Hmm.
ARPA Editorial. So in arpaeditorial.com, I think you can buy it, or in all the online shops like Amazon. Everything it is also easy to find.
Amazing. Daniel, thank you so much to be here and speaking with us at the Intelligence Spotlight.
Thank you for the invitation. It has been my pleasure.